So what happened?
Before we understood the scale, there was an audio recording, and what it captured was deeply disturbing.
So what were you doing?
This recording captures a conversation between a social worker and a teenage orphan inside a childcare facility where vulnerable children are supposed to be safe.
Nani alikuwa anakuambia? Director. Anajifanyanga na Mungu ati God bless us, God will do this. May you live to see the God in the land of the living. Which God?
This is a story about alleged sexual abuse committed against the most vulnerable children in society in a charitable children's institution by a man tasked with protecting them. Their voices guide this story. Whistleblowers who worked at the facility claiming they endured harassment and abuse in silence and are finally exposing it. In a country of nearly 48 million people, childhood should be a promise of safety, care, and opportunity. But for at least 3.6 million children in Kenya, that promise is fragile. Many are classified as vulnerable or orphaned. Even though some still have living parents, they're absorbed into a system that decides where they live and who raises them. Across the country, a portion of these children are housed in controlled care facilities meant to protect them. Yet, how they are managed and whether they truly serve the best interests of the child remains largely obscured from public scrutiny. According to the Directorate of Children's Services, there were over 850 charitable institutions in Kenya by 2020, housing over 45,480 children who are either disabled, orphans, or rehabilitated street children. Only 30 of the 850 institutions are managed by the Directorate of Children's Services under the Ministry of Gender, Culture, the Arts, and Heritage. The other 810 are privately run.
The history of child protection in Kenya, we can say it began in 2001. Initially, they used to be there, but we used to call them children homes. But there's nothing homely about an institution. No matter how much you pep it up, it is still an institution because it has guidelines, it has rules, it has regulations, there is expectations. So that's where we began.
On the surface, some of these institutions have the facade of facilities filled with altruistic love. But beneath the facade is a culture of abuse. In Kajiado County, near Kenya's capital Nairobi, sits one such institution, Ebenezer Children's Home. Documents in our possession show that Ebenezer Children's Home has between 50 and 77 children at any given point. The home was established to rehabilitate street children. It sits on this parcel of land 50 kilometers outside of Nairobi City. But according to our sources, the home is a nightmare beyond your imagination. The two audios you're about to hear were secretly recorded inside the facility. Warning, it contains a vivid description of alleged sexual abuse.
So what were you doing?
The audio is a conversation between a staff member at Ebenezer Children's Home and a 17-year-old under the care of the facility. The minor, who is in tears, is revealing disturbing details about alleged repeated sexual abuse. The minor heard in this recording had been committed to Ebenezer Children's Home for over 2 years. According to an official letter by the Kajiado West Sub-County Children's Officer, she was placed in Ebenezer Children's Home because she, quote, was in need of care and protection, end of quote. She says that not long after seeking shelter at Ebenezer Children's Home, she began experiencing sexual abuse.
Nakwambika. Nani alikuwa anakwambia? Daddy. Director.
The minor identifies the alleged perpetrator by the nickname Daddy and Director.
So he is also a grandfather of 6.
Thank you, Canon. My name is Martin Koigo. I love the Lord as my personal savior.
According to multiple sources in our investigation, they point to one man, Martin Koigo, as the individual identified by the minor. He is the founder and executive director of Ebenezer Children's Home.
Nilikuwa naona aibu, but hakuna aibu tena. You know? And he knows he did that.
Susan, not her real name, recorded the audio. A survivor of sexual violence, she plays a crucial role in the story. Not only as the whistleblower, she also claims that she was directly affected.
Aliniita tu kumfanyia project proposals, resource mobilization. Why? Because pale alinipata, in fact, my former boss alimwambia, meet my resource mobilizer. This girl writes good projects.
Susan started working at Ebenezer Children's Home shortly after meeting Koigo, but after joining, she noticed stark differences between Ebenezer and other institutions she had previously worked for. She narrates the events that transpired moments before the recording. According to her, it was a normal working day at Ebenezer. After arriving, she went to see a colleague who she says had been detained by the executive director for theft. On her way back to the office, what she witnessed changed her life.
Before I went to see her, nikaita huyu msichana, nikamwambia, hebu enda kwa ofisi ya director, uchukue vyombo viko hapo upeleke pale kitchen. Vile niliambia msichana aende, mimi nikajishughulisha kuenda kuongea na huyo mama na kuenda kitchen hivyo kuangalia. Akili ikarudi ikaniambia, you've taken too long. Hebu niende sasa nikafungue laptop nione emails, nianze kujibu nione ni nini ina happen. Sikuna meza. Na hii side nyingine ni kiti yangu, meza iko hapa. So they are on the other side. So immediately waliona the director of course ndiye aliniona. Na vile niliuliza msichana aliniambia amemwambia toka haraka uende. Na yeye akaingia wapi? Kwa ofisi yake, na msichana naye akatoka na vyombo. So mimi kuenda nilishindwa hata kuingia ndani because of course nimeshaona, so there is no need ya kuingia ndani. Msichana tulikutana hapo tu. Juu mimi hata yani I was so surprised.
After the incident, Susan secretly drew more information from the girl. What she says she witnessed is exactly what the minor describes in the audio recording.
Umeshazoea aje? So it happens. Mimi nikitoka huku kwa ofisi nikienda, mnaenda hapo. Anakuita hapo. Anakutumananga. Sometimes anatumanga watoto. Kuja ni anajifanya mpango kuleta ukienda kushikashi. I was like, director kwambia hivyo. And I trusted her because I am a victim. So what were you doing?
To understand the effects of the alleged abuse better, we reached out to a child therapist.
Actually, in this case, what I picked, that is defilement, because this is a child who is below 18. And with a child below 18, we don't talk of consent or no consent. It's bad, it shouldn't be happening. And so defilement is because there is penetration of the sexual organs. So one of it is complex PTSD. It's complex because it's chronic. She talks of it having been happening. And even as she's being, is it really interviewed or interrogated? The person is trying to get the information. You can see she keeps holding back, because there's a lot of fear of maybe being blamed, because it is unfortunate that the victim is always the one who is blamed.
The children taken in by Ebenezer Children's Home are vulnerable. The institution describes itself as, quote, a place of refuge and sanctuary for vulnerable groups of citizens, mainly street families and mentally and physically challenged children, end of quote. But who is Martin Koigo? And how has this continued uninhibited for years in a crucial sector such as child protection? Martin Koigo Mugo established Ebenezer Children's Home in 1994 in Isinya sub-county, Kajiado County. In the over 31 years of its existence, the institution claims to have rehabilitated over 1,000 children. His Facebook presence paints the picture of a devout man passionate about child protection. The institution is visited occasionally by well-wishers who often bring with them food and compassion for the children. Koigo is also the vice chairperson of the Children Home Founders Association of Kenya, according to the association's website. A society which claims to, quote, work together for the common goal of the welfare of the children homes founders for the best interest of the children, end of quote. According to the Street Families Rehabilitation Trust Fund website, an institution by the name Ebenezer Children's Home is listed as a partner. But in a letter responding to Africa Uncensored, the National Council for Children's Services said that Ebenezer Children's Home is not validly registered, saying, quote, its registration certificate issued on 15th of November 2020 expired on 15th October 2023 and to date has not been renewed as provided for in the Children Act 2022 due to non-compliance, end of quote. Effectively, the Council for Children's Services verified that the facility was not operating legally. The Street Families Rehabilitation Trust Fund was established in 2003, and part of its function is to manage donations for the rehabilitation of street families through a trust fund run by government appointees.
I would not really put an estimated figure on that, but I know the National Fund for Disability has funded the institution and even built a workshop for the institution. The Street Rehabilitation Fund has been funding the institution yearly. I don't know how the government is bypassing all these instances of abuse. Either there's something they're not really looking into, but if they really wanted to find this information, I think they wouldn't just do the superficial, because majority just come to look at the books. The books is not where the information is.
A leaked internal document shows that Ebenezer Children's Home spent over 1.44 million Kenya shillings from the Street Rehabilitation Fund in 2022. But behind this facade is a man whose actions have left many broken lives, lives which trusted him for protection. We interviewed former employees of Koigo's who blew the whistle on the harassment and abuse they witnessed. We'll call them Mary and Cindy.
I worked as a social worker. I came in as a consultant. So I came in 2 to 3 days a week where I had to prepare anything administrative. I was in charge of working with the children there, ideally child protection. So that was ideally what I did, handling child protection related issues.
Better than anyone, Susan, Mary, and Cindy know Martin's management of the institution.
So ideally, most of the staff, including myself, you just have to limit yourself to whatever you can do in your own power. So if it really is beyond you, you just leave it at that. Yes, because you can't ask further questions.
It's been years since Mary left Ebenezer Children's Home. But before she left, she had worrying observations about the familiarity Martin Koigo had with the female children under his care.
Some of the victims I've talked to, there's one who really singled out an issue of the director touching the breasts of the girls in broad daylight in front of the staff. And I think I asked her, it is not something that he's concealing, it's something like he's doing it even in front of you people.
During their time at Ebenezer, all three women we spoke to alleged that they had been sexually harassed by Martin Koigo. Because Ebenezer Children's Home is in a remote area with limited transport, Mary and Cindy had no choice but to take long rides to Isinya with Koigo.
I'd say the most uncomfortable situations for me was really riding in his car to work. It really didn't sit well with me, especially when switching gears. I remember because he drove a manual Prado. He used to rub his hands on my thighs most of the time when driving. When we are in the store trying to rearrange the store, he would grab me by the waist most of the time and push me to himself.
According to Susan, Koigo continued to force himself on her. The anguish in her voice mirrors her account of that time.
I've never shared this, but now I have a forum. Maybe I can say it. I am a victim of that. And nilikuwa naona aibu, but hakuna aibu tena. You know? And he knows he did that.
After the alleged sexual assault, Susan says Koigo coerced her by handing her 2,000 Kenya shillings. Desperate for employment, Susan says that she didn't have an option but to take it. Susan alleges that Koigo sexually assaulted her repeatedly in the same office she was meant to work in.
So, that night now, after ametoka bank nini, sasa nataka nikupe nitakudrop nini. He came, niko hapo nimengoja. Kafunga zikonji ya juu na chini. Mimi nishamalizana na kazi, nimetoka kwa desk, nimekaa kwa couch. Ni kuna couches. Watu wako pesa iko. So mimi nimekaa kwa couch hapo. He was like leo unanipatia. Today we are having sex and I was like na one thing mimi niliona itanisaidia ni kukubali kusema it's okay. Because at I relax, I would be able to figure out what next.
According to Susan, Koigo continued to force himself on her.
Ninafanya kazi very important, ananiambia stop sending that email. Kuja unibebe. I knew, siko najua kunibeba ni nini. Ukisikia akikwambia kuja unibebe, he's sleeping on you and pumping on your thighs and just releasing on you. The last few months before I left, ilikuwa mara mingi. It was many times. Mpaka nilifika a point siwezi nikavumilia. Because ile siku mtu ataniwekelea gun vizuri, nitafungua hiyo miguu vizuri sana. And I feared. And he threatened me the very last day ndio nitoke. He did. Ufute hizo recordings na ufunge mdomo ama tutajuana.
According to our interviewees, in addition to the abuse, the children at the institution are not being reintegrated as required under the Children's Act.
Pale watoto hawaendi nyumbani. That is why unaona hiyo namba iko tu constant. Kama ni kuongezeka inaongezeka, but hawapungui. Na ukijaribu kusaidia mtoto ati nimepata watu wao sijui nini, it becomes a problem. Because hiyo ni mali yangu, that is why I'm getting money from, you shouldn't touch that.
According to the Children Act 2022, quote, unless there are compelling circumstances, a child shall not be placed in a charitable children's institution for a period exceeding 3 years. End of quote.
Many CCIs did not want to comply with what you call exiting the children. Because once you have this child, they are not yours. You're supposed to exit them. We have scenarios where the children call the managers of the institutions dad and mom. We have scenarios where children are rescued, practical example from Machakos, placed in a CCI in Kajiado. And their parents they have been looking for these kids for a very long time. They even gave up. So once this child gets to 18 years old, where do they go? And the reason why some of these CCIs want to maintain that is because of the funding, yes, and to maintain the institution.
In 2022, the government of Kenya launched the National Care Reform Strategy for Children in Kenya for the period between 2022 and 2032. Among the report's goals is to, quote, transition from a system of care where many children and young people are living in institutional care to a system which allows children to live safely, happily, and sustainably in family and community-based care, end of quote. But enforcement of existing regulations remains a problem. The Children Act of 2022 establishes devolved levels of oversight and enforcement. Ebenezer Children's Home is in violation of multiple regulations, and it is not licensed by the National Council for Children's Services. Among the rules in the Children Act 2022 is that every charitable children's institution is supposed to be inspected by the National Council for Children's Services. According to a former employee, due to Martin Koigo's influential status, he gets prior notification of inspection visits.
I also shared the conversation with some of the child protection stakeholders we're working with in the county, and so far I'd say nothing much has been done. The institution still remains in operation despite such allegations being made.
All of Koigo's former employees and alleged victims have mentioned his powerful connections. This, they claim, is the reason Koigo remains untouched. Martin Koigo sits as the secretary of the board. There are 3 clergy members, including Koigo's partner, the local Sholinke area chief, and Nakuru's first governor, and then state comptroller Kinuthia Mbugua.
The director has friends in higher places, so tackling this issue would really mean you drab some feathers the wrong way. So when we come to, let's say, the chair of the board, this is someone who's well known, it's a prominent politician. So really reporting the matter even to authorities would not really assist that much, because if the person has friends in high places, you'd report to this office, and probably by the time you're leaving that office, he's already have word that a certain person ABCD was in this office reporting that your institution ABCD.
We reached out to the alleged perpetrator, Martin Koigo, for his response on the allegations made against him in this documentary. So, Martin, I'm reaching out because there's some allegations that have been made regarding your management of the facility. To be specific, allegations of sexual harassment and sexual abuse, both by minors within the facility and employees at the facility. And we believe in fair reporting. That means giving you a fair chance to respond to the allegations.
As we talk, I'm in the hospital.
Okay.
I'm admitted in the hospital. Would you kindly maybe call me next week when I'm through?
All I'm seeking is your response to the allegations. I'm just trying to get to that.
It's an allegation. Allegation. Anybody people can call you Amanda. They can see anything. But will I concentrate with my health, or I'm first concentrate with what people are saying?
All right. So just that.
My age, I'm about 70 years of age.
All right.
So I think I'm so old for. I think for some of the things which I've already been told by somebody have called me. Yeah, about the same.
Right.
But please, because of my health, give me a charge. Let me first recover.
Okay, I hear you, sir.
If I pass on, if I die, it's okay. Somebody will take over from Ebenezer.
Yeah. Well, look, sir, I hear you, but you're going off of public interest in this case, and it's a matter of grave concern. And I'm not looking for a 2-hour sit down with you. I just would want to know your response to the allegations. That's all.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So what's your response to the allegations that I've mentioned? Are they true or are they false?
Of course, it's not true.
Okay, so
I'm telling you, I'm quite old. I wish I can be able to talk to you, but give me a chance. Let me first deal with my health.
during our initial conversation, Martin Koigo denied the allegations made against him and requested more time to respond, citing ill health. We honored that request, but subsequent efforts to reach him for further comment via calls and text messages were unsuccessful.
Kwanza those days were my worst because hata nikirudi kwa nyumba I used to kwanza akili yani nimefungua tu mlango hata sijaoga sijafanya anything, akili inanirudisha huko, naanza kufikiria what has been happening the whole week, the whole 4 days.
Koigo's standing in the church as an elder and lay reader is evident from the comments under his posts on social media.
I'd say people hold him in high regard in society. You know, people would not expect that he would really do this. And I think that's the reason why majority of the people who have reported have not been seen as credible. You know, how do you tell us this person? We know him. You know, he's known by almost everyone.
To be the father of my children. And me and him, God has blessed us with 3 children. So he is also a grandfather of 6.
What she did not tell you is that I'm the oldest serving reader in this diocese of Nairobi.
This is pure hypocrisy. This is very wrong. We are ni sawa, tuko na watoto watatu tumebarikiwa na wenye mmeweka pale. What about the girls? What about me?
Her pain has persisted long after she left Ebenezer Children's Home. The emotional trauma is something she has had to live with every day.
Child protection in Kenya currently, I'd say, it's not really in a good state that would say the children are receiving the necessary care. It has not been highlighted in a long time. And so institutions we only hear of certain institutions have been, especially when they're run by foreigners. But there are so many institutions in the country that are also being run by Kenyan citizens where abuse is still taking place. And the government has yet to probably highlight the issue or is aware of the issue but really is not acting on it.
At the time of filming this documentary, Martin Koigo, the executive director of Ebenezer Children's Home, was not under arrest or investigation.
I also shared the conversation with some of the child protection stakeholders we are working with in the county, and so far I'd say nothing much has been done. This institution still remains in operation despite such allegations being made.
In a response to Africa Uncensored, the National Council for Children's Services dismissed the claims as misinformed. The council maintains that it has no record of any complaint or information regarding the alleged abuse of minors at the institution. It adds that when cases are formally reported within charitable children's institutions, they are handled through established legal frameworks. But in this case, the council insists that no such report was ever made.
For the child, my heart goes out. Being a child protector in the child protection space, my heart goes out. One, in knowing that as long as the perpetrator is out there, many children could be falling into their hands. Many children are having their lives ruined. Many children are being robbed of the opportunity to be children. Very many. So my prayer is also that that child is going to receive trauma-informed care and that child is to be rescued. That is not a place for that child to be in because you don't know how much can they stomach.
We sent questions to both the National Council for Children's Services and the Directorate for Children's Services. We sent questions to the Directorate about their criteria for licensing charitable children's institutions like Ebenezer Children's Home and about their monitoring of the well-being of children placed in institutions. In addition to that, what action the Directorate will take in light of the allegations, and whether they are aware of any reported complaint against Martin Koigo as alleged by our sources. We asked the Council for Children's Services, among other questions, about allegations of inaction after complaints were brought to their attention. The Council responded, saying that it had not received any complaint. It added that, quote, "The Council has not renewed the license of Ebenezer Children's Home as it has failed to meet the set standards." The Council added that it will, quote, "conduct necessary investigations and due diligence to institute necessary actions." The Directorate of Children's Services, DCS, had not responded by the time this documentary was published. As plans to transition from residential care to family-based care are underway, claims of widespread child rights violations persist. Vulnerable children rescued from the streets deserve the highest form of care. One can't overstate the importance of heightened monitoring to ensure regulations are adhered to.